You shared with me a story earlier about somebody telling you something along the lines of, there is no color in Mexico. Tell me that story.
I hear it all the time because my content is based on my experience as a black woman in Mexico. And when I speak from my experience, people are outraged and they normally tell me, in Mexico, we don't see color. We're just Mexican in Mexico. And you bring your colonized, privileged American mindset to Mexico and you're destroying it because it's perfectly fine, basically.
And you hear this from Mexicans or Mexican Americans?
99.9% Mexican Americans.
Right. The problem is there's this misconception that in Mexico they don't see color and they don't see race, that everyone's just Mexican. The problem with that is that to say that there is no color in Mexico and there is no race is like being in America and saying, oh, in America we're all just Americans, there is no race and no color, when that is a huge lie. Because the truth when it comes to America as well as Mexico is that every country is diverse when it comes to race and color. With that said, there are a lot of jobs in Mexico that the requirement to acquire that job is you have to be light skinned and you have to also have blue or green eyes. So when people here that are born in the U.S., because I was born in Mexico, I speak from a place of experience. People here speak from a place of opinion. So when people that are born here and only go to Mexico as tourists, of course, you only get to experience Mexico as a tourist. You don't get to experience it as actually living there and facing the struggles of being Mexican as an indigenous brown person. You don't get to experience that. You get to experience and be treated as a tourist. There's a huge difference. So with that said, when people that are born in this country give an opinion like that about Mexico, a lot of them are what we call whitexicans, Euro-Mexicans. They speak from a place of privilege. They've never had to experience colorism, at least in a negative way, meaning colorism has never prevented them or limited their opportunities because they are white passing, white Mexicans. They, by default, are the standard of beauty. So when they go to Mexico, they are treated as such. That's the reason why jobs over there, many jobs, especially where you have to show your face, if you will, they require that you're light-skinned. They will only hire you if you're light-skinned, if you have predominantly European features. There's this thing that a lot of these whitexicans will never experience. You will never be called pinche India or pinche Indio. That is one of the worst things that you could be called in Mexico, which pretty much is to say effing indigenous. However, it is a slur because we have been taught that being indigenous is the most inferior thing you could be. So when you say to somebody effing indigenous, what you're really calling them is you effing inferior person, uneducated, poor, etc. All the negative things that come with it. So these white passing people and never even experience those kind of things, they speak from a place of ignorance. They have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. They've never actually lived in Mexico as indigenous people. The people that are discriminated the most in Mexico are indigenous people. They are living in the worst conditions in Mexico, and that's not by coincidence. That is a systemic effort. So earlier you told me something like when you arrived to Mexico, you seen a magazine, and then you said what?
On that magazine, it was nothing but white passing Latinos. I said, white, 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 white.
In Mexico magazine, all you saw were white people. And you thought to yourself, where's the indigenous people at in your magazines and your television? The irony in that is the fact that in the movie Wakanda Forever, the character that played Kukulkan or Namor, he's a dark-skinned indigenous person. So when he did that role, Mexico media were angry, saying he is not the proper representation of Mexico. Why is he not the proper representation of Mexico? Because the effort is to depict the Mexican, the face of Mexico, a white person. And that is why when you open a Mexico magazine or watch Mexico channel, you see nothing but white people.